They came in silence, not with fleets or weapons, but with light that healed the scars of Earth's wounded skies. The Illari, a species older than recorded time, had watched humanity from the dark edges of the cosmos, their presence whispered, only in the dreams of prophets and the frenzied ramblings of madmen, until the day the stars wept fire and the Vorak Empire descended with metallic wrath. Black ships blotting out the sun and tearing through Earth's defenses like paper, enslaving cities, burning forests and shattering hope. And just when the last global beacon flickered, the Illari arrived, not to conquer or negotiate, but to stand, hovering silently over the oceans, their vast crystalline forms refracting celestial hues, ignoring the United Council's frantic hails, speaking only when the Vorak issued a final ultimatum, surrender or extinction. And it was then that the Illari moved, not to run, but to form an unbreakable line around Earth, their voices resonating not in words, but in harmonies that vibrated across dimensions, freezing Vorak ships mid-air, melting their missiles before impact and lifting Earth's wounded from the rubble with beams of golden light. For centuries, the Illari had sworn to remain neutral, their civilization built on observation, not interference, but something in humanity's chaos, the way we laughed while bleeding, the way we fought even while dying, the way a child shielded her dog with a broken umbrella amidst alien fire, broke their vow of distance and moved them to compassion. They saw in humans the same reckless fire they once feared in themselves, the same unstoppable hunger for meaning, for love, for survival. And so they made a choice that would fracture alliances across galaxies and shatter ancient oaths, declaring, in one moment of absolute defiance, that peace without justice was cowardice, and neutrality in the face of evil was betrayal. Thus began an alliance no one predicted, the galaxy's gentlest species standing beside its most unpredictable, as human soldiers loaded plasma rifles beside luminous beings of pure energy, and children no longer cried when the sky turned dark, because they knew now when monsters came, so would the light. The war that followed was unlike any the galaxy had known, not because of its scale, though entire star systems burned, nor because of its weapons, though technologies older than time clashed with human defiance, but because of why it was fought, not for territory, not for conquest, but because a race that had never lifted a finger in violence chose to raise their hand for us. The Illari stood not just as shields but as amplifiers of human will, their resonance amplifying human weapons, their minds linking with our commanders, their glowing limbs repairing ships mid-battle with pulses of thought. And yet, despite all this power, they never once struck to kill. Their defense was absolute, elegant, a harmony of force and restraint, disabling instead of destroying, blinding instead of burning, disarming with a grace that made even seasoned human generals weep. It was this restraint that enraged the Vorak most, for their empire was built on fear. And here stood a species who would not fear them, and a species they considered weak, us, who now held the line with divine strength at their side. As battles raged over Mars, Titan, and the shattered remains of the Proxima colonies, the legend of the Illari human accord spread like wildfire, sparking rebellions in systems long thought dead, and igniting hope in the unlikeliest of places. Pirate fleets, who once raided Earth shipments, now guarded our trade routes, and AI factions long dormant awoke from exile to join the cause. But not all was unity, for within Earth itself there were those who doubted the Illari, who feared their motives, called them manipulators, cosmic saviors with hidden strings. Yet every investigation found no agenda, only sacrifice, only loss. For with each Illari killed while shielding a child, their bodies dissolved into fragments of crystal that sang one final note before vanishing into the wind. The cost for them was real, irreversible, and still they stood even when the Vorak unleashed the Void Maw, a weapon made not of matter, but of anti-time, erasing not just bodies but histories, entire squads lost not to death, but to non-existence, erased from memory, family, record. And yet in that moment of existential horror, the Illari did the unthinkable. They offered memory as a weapon, linking their minds to ours, allowing us to remember the forgotten, bringing back the names and faces of the lost through sheer will. Giving birth to the Memorial Offensive, A campaign powered by grief and love in which every lost soldier's name was spoken before battle, their essence woven into strategy, their courage lighting the path forward. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a young human captain named Risa Langley, who once watched her city fall under Vorik fire, became the voice of this new unity, standing atop the scorched moon of Elvar 6, her armor scorched, her voice cracked, as she broadcast one message into the stars. We are not the strongest, we are not the wisest, but we are not alone. And that makes us unstoppable. Her speech became the anthem of resistance echoed by Ilyari choir ships whose very presence turned tide after tide. And as months bled into years, the galaxy changed. Not through conquest, but through example. And in the final days, when the Vorak fleet encircled Earth for one last siege, blackening the orbit with metal and fire, the Ilyari gathered not in panic, but in perfect formation, hands linked with humans, their combined minds reaching into the very heart of the enemy's command ship, not to destroy it, but to show it, revealing the memories of every child orphaned, every Ilyari fragment that sang itself to death, every act of mercy answered with blood. The Vorak command broke, not under gunfire, but under the unbearable weight of conscience, for the Ilyari had not come to dominate, but to transform, and by standing with us, they reminded the galaxy that the gentlest force is sometimes the strongest one, and that the wildest hearts, human hearts, can become vessels of peace when held in the hands of those who believe in them. And so, with the war ended and the stars quiet, the Ilyari began to fade once more into myth, choosing no reward, no throne, no monument. Only the promise that, should darkness rise again, they would return, not as saviors, but as friends who once believed in the impossible, that humanity was worth standing for. Years passed, and though peace returned to the stars, the memory of what had happened refused to fade. Earth rebuilt, not just its cities and fleets, but its soul, tempered now by the presence of those who had once walked beside them like living starlight. The Ilyari were gone. Their crystalline forms vanished into the void without a single word, a farewell, leaving behind only fragments of their luminous bodies now enshrined in great halls of remembrance across human colonies. Captain Risa Langley, now an ambassador rather than a warrior, often stood before crowds on newly terraformed worlds, her voice steady, her eyes distant, speaking not of victory, but of honor, the kind earned when someone stronger chooses to fight beside you, not for power, but because they see you. The Ilyari had seen something in humanity no one else had, not potential for destruction, but for compassion so wild it could change the rhythm of galaxies, and in their absence, humans began to ask deeper questions. What else might be out there watching, waiting to see what we choose next? Across distant systems, children were taught not just about the war, but about why the gentlest species chose us. Because even in our brokenness, we chose to protect each other, to laugh in the ruins, to stand when standing meant death. And, sometimes late at night in quiet observatories or silent deserts, some claimed they still saw them. Faint ripples of light at the edge of perception, like a song half remembered, like a presence that was always there, just beyond reach. Scientists debated it, poets wrote about it, and the old veterans simply smiled, for they knew. The Ilyari had not abandoned humanity. They had simply returned to the stars, confident that the ones they defended could now stand on their own. And somewhere beyond nebulae and time, the Ilyari watched not as gods but as guardians in silence, their vow fulfilled, their legacy etched into the pulse of every human heart that still dared to hope in the face of darkness, to love in the face of war, and to remember, not just who we were but who we had become when the galaxy's gentlest species stood with us.